In this video, I'm going to show you how to solve the ALEKS problem called identifying molecules that could be in a cell membrane. This is going to give you the structure of 4 different molecules. It's going to ask you, first of all, whether or not each one could be in a cell membrane, and then if the answer is yes, it's going to ask you which direction the membrane would be located. Now, in order for the molecule to be in a cell membrane, it needs to have one end of the molecule that is polar and the other end of the molecule being nonpolar. And the easiest way for you to identify these different portions is a nonpolar portion is going to be all carbons and hydrogens. The polar portion is going to have an electronegative element like an oxygen or a nitrogen, and it's going to have a charge on it like O- or N-. So for example, this portion of this molecule right here, this is definitely polar because it has that O-. This portion of the molecule is also polar. Now, because this molecule has 2 polar ends, it doesn't have a nonpolar end, this could not be located in a membrane. In order to be in a membrane, it needs to have one end polar, one end nonpolar. So let's take a look at this one. We've got over here, that's definitely a polar end of the molecule. This portion, even though the oxygens are not charged, it still is going to count. So those oxygens and nitrogens don't have charges. It's still going to count as polar. So this one also can't be in the membrane. And if it can't be in a membrane, you're not answering this question over here. Down here, what do we have? We have a polar portion of the molecule right there. And this, finally, is a non-polar portion. So we can say, yes, this one would be in a cell membrane because it has polar and nonpolar. These two ends, because these are all hydrocarbons, all carbons and hydrogens, this end is nonpolar, this end is also nonpolar. So this molecule could not be in a cell membrane. Now, once we have decided if a molecule can be in the cell membrane, we have to ask ourselves, which direction would the membrane actually be? So I'm going to draw a little picture of a cell membrane over here. We're going to have, in the cell membrane, we're going to have a whole bunch of little heads with the tails coming off of each one of them. Each one of them actually has 2 tails, even though I've really only drawn one. And the heads are all polar, and the tails are all nonpolar. I'm going to abbreviate that NP. So these molecules, this is the one that we're dealing with, these molecules, the polar ends of the molecule are going to embed themselves into the polar heads of the cell membrane. So if we had our cell membrane over here, it would orient itself kind of like this with this desired molecule, with the polar end of the molecule, that's this end right here, embedding itself into the polar end of the cell membrane. The nonpolar end of our molecule would be hanging, in this case, to the left. The cell membrane itself would be to the right.